Hello and welcome to the Displaced African podcast. The Displaced African is the African immigrant's personal development blog. It can be found at www.thedisplacedafrican.com. Hello everybody, this is Mwangi here, and today's podcast is with Derrick Ashong. Now, Derrick is probably most famous for a YouTube video which I've linked to within this post, where he talked about why he supports Obama. It was one where this guy came with a camera and started asking him very aggressive questions about why do you support Obama, and really wanted to get into more detail, and he really shone through and became a YouTube superstar that day. That video has been seen more than 1 million times. So if you want to see the video, just go to YouTube and look for Derrick Ashong, and Ashong is spelled Ashong, and Derrick is Derrick, and look for the Obama video that's been watched 1 million times. Aside from that, Derrick is a lot more than that. He's a Ghanaian immigrant to the US, but before immigrating to the US for the final time, he lived in Saudi Arabia, he lived in Qatar, and he lived in the Middle East. And he's also a professional speaker. He went to Harvard. And today we'll be talking to him as DNA, who is the frontman of his band called Soulfege, and Soulfege is Soulfege. This is a two-part interview. It's an hour long, so I split it into two 30-minute sections. And just before we get started, let me encourage you to go to the band's Facebook page, which can be found at facebook.com/Soulfege, Soulfege, and become a friend of theirs. And also head on over to iTunes tomorrow. That is July the 15th. Head on over to iTunes and pick up their new album called Take the Mic. So the second part of this interview comes out tomorrow. I hope you enjoy the first. This is Mwangi here. Enjoy. Hello, this is Mwangi here, and today I'm here with Derrick Ashong. How are you, Derrick?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. So, Derrick, so let people know where you're coming from. Talk a bit about your early life, where you came from, and where you are now.
Absolutely. I was born in Ghana, in Accra, West Africa. And when I was a kid, I moved to Brooklyn, New York, and then at age 8, I moved to Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, and then when I was 12, I moved to Doha, which is in Qatar, in the Arabian Gulf. Then I moved back to the United States for my junior year of high school when I was 16.
And you've been in the States ever since?
Yeah, I've been based in the States ever since. I still stay pretty well connected back home. I try to go at least once a year in recent years. But I live in the United States. Right now, I'm actually in Los Angeles.
Okay. And something I hear about all the time, I'm here in Australia, so I wouldn't know very much about this, is that apparently there's quite a bit of friction between like African Americans and Africans. Apparently they call Africans like African booty scratch and all these sorts of things, and Africans call African Americans akatas, which is like a beast. So talk a little bit about that. Is that true? Is it nuanced?
I think that there is some element of tension, but it may be overstated. So I do believe that there typically are good relations between Africans and African Americans, but I think that one thing that has happened is that people in both communities have fallen prey to the misguided notions about who and what we are. And so you have all of these stereotypes of African Americans that exist in mainstream American society, that they're this or that, or, lazy, or that they're criminal, or they're not intelligent. And Africans come in and buy into many of the stereotypes anyone else does. Meanwhile, you have all these stereotypes of Africans, that we're poor, we're all starving, that we're desperate just to survive, and that Africa is hopeless, and an African cannot make anything of themselves in the absence of assistance from the West. And African Americans buy into some of those stereotypes as well. And so I think that part of it is people just not having a real understanding or real connection with folks from another culture and just believing what they hear on TV. At the same time, there's a flip side of that. There are stereotypes that people in Ghana have, that African Americans are all rich and they're like the upper class in American society. I've had people literally say this to me, and they've all got cars and lots of girls, and they just live a high life, and they're really dangerous, and a lot of them are criminal, but boy, do they make money. Not realizing that 50% of the brothers in New York City are unemployed. right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have African Americans who believe that, oh my God, Africa is the motherland, it's the home of all culture and humanity, and that's where all the kings and the queens, when everyone in Africa is beautiful and proud and they're wealthy, and when we were in Africa, we were all kings and queens. And I'm like, yo, if everybody's a king and queen, who is sweeping the streets, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, so on a practical level, I think there's not a major beef between Africans and African Americans. There are certain misunderstandings that can be very readily dealt with by real substantive interchange and trying to seek to know more about each other's cultures.
Okay. So what was your relationship after you showed up in junior high? Was it back in Brooklyn or where did you go back to?
Well, it wasn't junior high, actually. I spent all of junior high in the Middle East. It was high school.
Oh, high school.
I had 2 years of school in the U.S. before going to college. So I'd already made it through half of high school in the Middle East, and it was a massive culture shock coming back here. First of all, I come in as this kid with like a completely different cultural background. I've grown up, every 4 years until I was 20, I moved to a new country. All my friends are multilingual. I have a weird accent that's like a combination of all these different places and people that I've grown up with. The kids in my high school have never been south of New Jersey, of D.C. or north of New York, and so they have no idea what to do with somebody like me. And of course, with kids, if you come in as something different, then it's automatically a threat. It's like less than. But I also had a certain amount of confidence in myself, and so I wasn't really trying to have anybody put me down. So there were some kinds of tensions. But additionally, I didn't know certain things that are like accepted in American culture, that are not spoken of in polite society, but that are accepted. Like, I didn't know that black people are supposed to be dumb. No one had told me that as a young black kid, I should be getting lesser grades or be more in trouble or not good at math or anything. So I'm getting A's all over the place. I'm accepted to Harvard. I'm like blowing up the standardized test because nobody gave me the memo. Okay? And so then people are like, oh, well, you're not like the others. You're not like it. I'm like, not like the other what? Like, not like, you're different. Different from what? You mean I'm smarter than you? And all the other, because you talking about I'm different from the black kids, but I get better grades than the white kids too. So what are you talking about? Like, I don't get it. And it took me a while to realize what the implication was and what people were trying to get at. And so it was a big shock, but you survived.
Okay. And so you ended up in Harvard. How did that happen and what was Harvard like?
Well, the Harvard thing happened. It's a kind of a long story, but in a nutshell, I was at an event, a summer program, and some kids were having some dialogue about affirmative action, and someone was making foolish statements about how black people get all the good spots and they take all the great college spots, which is really very evident by the fact that you have more young black men in prison than in college. Obviously, black people are taking all the good spots, and that 11% of the community